Most people think financial abuse looks like empty threats or explosive fights, but it doesn't. Real control is quiet. It's the way a spouse times your allowance to coincide with grocery runs, or how they forget to transfer rent money until you've begged twice. I didn't realize I was in a cage until I saw the receipts. All my own. This is how I picked the lock. The frozen debit card incident happened on a Tuesday. I was buying milk when the terminal declined the transaction. The cashier ran it again, frowning at the screen. Insufficient funds. That didn't make sense. I checked the balance that morning. When I called the bank, they said the account required primary authorization for withdrawals. Primary meant my spouse. I drove home and mentioned it casually over dinner. "Oh, forgot to tell you," they said, not looking up from their plate. "New fraud alert system." Small things kept happening after that. Transfers I initiated would take 3 business days instead of 1 when they used to be instant. A payment for my phone bill slipped their mind the week we had out-of-town guests. Each time there was an explanation. Bank processing times, busy schedules, simple mistakes. But by the 3rd month, the explanations started needing explanations. The grocery allowance was the clearest pattern. Every Friday at 3 p.m., exactly enough for basics would appear in the shared account. One week, the deposit came at 5:15. The store closed at 6. I remember standing in the produce section with 10 minutes to choose everything for the week, while the cashier tapped their foot. When I got home with half the list, my spouse was at the table with a spreadsheet open. "We need to track waste better," they said, circling an itemized list from last month's receipts. Financial control never starts with a dramatic confrontation. It begins in the gaps. A missed transaction here, a delayed transfer there, until you're adjusting your entire rhythm to someone else's timing. The power isn't in the amount withheld. It's in the uncertainty. You start double-checking every purchase, rehearsing reasons for needing money, then deciding it's easier not to ask. By the time I saw the full pattern, I'd already begun collecting evidence. Not deliberately at first, just notes on my phone about deposit times, screenshots of declined payments. But something shifted when I lined them all up. The inconsistencies weren't mistakes. They were carefully spaced experiments to see how much adjustment I'd tolerate. That's when I stopped trying to understand the rules and started documenting them instead. The frozen card was just the beginning. I started keeping receipts from the grocery store, not just to track spending, but to track time, the exact minutes between when I asked for money and when it landed in the account. I logged conversations in shorthand. May 12th, called at 3:17 p.m. RE, car insurance, said, "I'll handle it." Policy lapsed May 15th. The notes lived in a password-protected spreadsheet I synced to an email account my wife didn't know I had. The password was the date of my first apartment lease, back when I still had keys that weren't conditional. Bank statements told the real story. I printed them monthly and highlighted the patterns. Recurring transfers delayed by 72 hours when bills were due, deposits that only cleared after multiple reminders. The credit card got accidentally frozen 3 times in 4 months, always when I had appointments downtown. Slowly, deliberately, I turned financial gaslighting into a paper trail. A divorce attorney later told me this was the cleanest evidence she'd seen in 20 years of practice. The numbers didn't lie, but they also didn't whisper, didn't make excuses, didn't claim they'd forget next time. Hiding the records became part of the routine. I took a second email account under a childhood nickname, something she'd never searched for, and backed everything up there. Printouts went inside a hollowed-out textbook on a shelf we never touched. The risk of discovery was constant, but the alternative, walking into court with nothing but my word against hers, was worse. One night, watching her sort the mail, I realized she handled every envelope first. So I started having bank correspondence sent to a P.O. box listed under an LLC, so generic even Google ignored it. By month 6, the spreadsheet had tabs. One for financial records, one for witness statements from friends who'd noticed the control, one for legal precedents in our state. The day I hit print on all 83 pages was the day I knew I could leave. The paperweight was heavier than I expected. Lawyers like tangible evidence, something they can hold, mark, enter into the record. My freedom fit in a 3-ring binder from Office Depot. The next morning, I drove to a storage unit and locked it inside. The unit was rented under the LLC too, with auto pay from a prepaid card. There was no trail. That was the point. Freedom isn't a single decision. It's the sum of small choices made while no one's watching. I started with a PayPal account under my maiden name, linked to an old email from college. Every time I sold a piece of old furniture or did a freelance proofreading job for a former coworker, I transferred just enough to cover a month's phone bill. Not enough to notice, but enough to matter. Setting up the rental was harder. I found the place through a friend of a friend, a studio above a garage, listed as storage in the owner's records. We signed the lease through an LLC I'd formed under my sister's address. The first time I saw it, the lockbox key left a streak of rust on my palm. I didn't move in, not yet. But knowing it was there changed the air in our house. Breathing got easier when I had somewhere else to be. The trust was the final piece. I told my spouse I was helping my nephew with a school project about personal finance, then spent 3 evenings at the library reading about irrevocable living trusts. The paperwork cost me $27 in notary fees and one white lie about a dentist appointment. When the documents came back, I kept them between the pages of a cookbook no one ever opened. That's how you do it. One invisible stitch at a time. You take the 20 minutes between their golf game and dinner to call the bank about a separate savings account. You let them see you scrolling through knitting tutorials while quietly emailing a divorce attorney from the same phone. You learn to move slowly, like hanging a picture while the guards aren't looking. By the time I had all 3 pieces, the income, the lease, the legal safeguards, it barely felt like preparation anymore. It just felt like living. The night before I filed, I sat on the floor of that empty studio with a takeout container and my laptop, checking the balances one last time. The room smelled like fresh paint and the garlic sauce from the Chinese place down the street. For the first time in years, I knew exactly what tomorrow would cost. The papers hit the courthouse steps before he knew I'd moved. That was the point. By the time he got served at work, standard envelope, no return address, I'd already signed the lease on the apartment, transferred half the savings to my new account, and changed my emergency contacts. The law moves slower than fear, but faster than surprise. He called within the hour. I let it go to voicemail, then played it back at half volume. First came the choked silence of someone rewriting history in their head, then the breath before the act. This is a misunderstanding. The right words in the wrong order, like a script flipped backwards. By dinner time, the tone had sharpened. Emails about fixing things, texts that pinged my phone like sonar. I didn't block him. The timestamps were evidence. The real shift came at our first mediation. He arrived early, jacket slung over one shoulder like we were meeting for lunch. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and pencil shavings. When he reached for my hand, I passed him the spreadsheet instead. 3 tabs: gaslighting logs, Venmo requests denied, every time my card declined at a pharmacy or gas station. He skimmed the first page, then closed the laptop with a click that sounded expensive. That's when I knew the control had tipped. Not when the judge stamped the papers, but earlier, when I handed the notary my new driver's license with an address he'd never seen. Power isn't about having the last word. It's about having your own receipts. I kept the keys to the apartment in my coat pocket for weeks after moving in. Not for safety, just to feel the ridges against my fingers when I needed to remember. Some doors only open from one side. The last thing I signed was the final decree. His signature took up twice the space, all capitals. The pen pressed so hard it tore the paper slightly at the edge. Mine fit neatly on the line. The receipts weren't just proof, they were a map. Every gas station coffee, every pharmacy run, every time I had to ask for my own money. They told a story the bank statements alone couldn't. If you're in a room where the pen is always in someone else's hand, start documenting. Not tomorrow, not when things get worse. Today. Keep it simple. Dates, amounts. The way they say, "We'll see," when you ask about the mortgage. The first time I swiped my own card at the grocery store, I stood there too long. The cashier tapped the counter. I didn't have to check with anyone. Hey, it means a lot that you stayed to the end. If this story found you at the right moment, please subscribe and share it with one person who will get it. Tell me in the comments what you'd have done differently or exactly the same. I'm Jason, and this is Wild Narratives.